The dust has settled. We all have talked about rookies for 1,000 hours at this point. So I feel like it's the best time now to go ahead and actually give you updated dynasty rankings just at every position. I'm going to start it off with running back. We're going to start with Ashton Jeanty. No, this is not a rookie rankings video. This is an overall running back rankings video. So yes, Jeanty is ahead of Gibbs. He's ahead of Bijan for me. I'm sorry. We threw him in the same tier with these guys at the beginning of the offseason. Y'all hated me for that. And y'all can hate me again for putting him at the very top. I don't give a damn. Now, in reality, if you pull up the site, they're all back to back to back for me. So they are pretty much identical. It is up to you. If you were a contender, you could go with Gibbs. If you were a contender, you could go with Bijan. My thought process here is Jeanty's getting selected 2 to 3 picks after them in redraft leagues. Yes. They are going pretty much back-to-back in 2025 leagues. With Jeanty, you are getting the extra 2-year reset. You go ahead and look at him in the prospect model. The only running backs that historically compare are guys like Bijan, CMC, Saquon Barkley. If you look at every single one of those running backs, at one point or another, they were the RB1 in Dynasty. I'm fine putting Jeanty there right now. He fits a contending build. He fits a rebuilding team. Now, going over and looking at Gibbs, Bijan. If I was a contender, I'm freaking pumped. And if I was a rebuilder, it's not like you absolutely have to sell these guys. But really, you are looking to ride out the production, and you're not going to see too much value accruement from these players. Obviously, absolute crushers. You can pull up this on the site. And obviously, if you're ever on the rankings page on the site, just click on a player and you can actually see all the stats that we are going to look at here. So like pulling up Jahmyr Gibbs, we're looking at a running back that this past season, he plays 57% of the snaps, which was right in line with what he did as a rookie. However, he jumps up to being the running back 1 in total fantasy points scored. 1,400 rushing yards, 500 receiving yards, almost 2,000 total yards. The man has 16 rushing touchdowns. You get the goal line involvement. I'm fine putting him as the RB1 ahead of Bijan. If you were worried about the departure of Ben Johnson, obviously you can go with Bijan Robinson instead. Bijan actually is getting drafted ahead of him in underdog best ball drafts at the moment. Bijan was the RB3 in total fantasy points scored. But if you look at Bijan's season last year, you really had the stretch at the beginning of the year where he was very underwhelming. If y'all remember the redraft videos back last season, I was getting clowned on for saying to buy low on Bijan consistently. But it's very obvious. He puts it together in the second half of the season. You have a stretch of games where he's the RB3, 9, 4, 9, 1, 25, 2, 9, 15, 8, 3, 2. So if he's able to repeat the second half of the season and you don't have the slow start, he could have been the running back 1 just like Gibbs. In reality, they're all in the same tier and it's up to you. Going over to tier 2, we are going to be looking at Devon Achane. Now, I was tuned into an FSE live stream earlier today and actually had a very interesting argument between Danny and Bush about Achane versus Jeanty for this season. But obviously, if you're looking at Dynasty, Achane, similar to the other 2 running backs with Bijan and Gibbs, if you're a rebuilder, you don't have to sell him, but I'd probably throw him in the trade block. I want this dude on a team that's ready to win right now. If you look at what Achane was able to do last season, incredibly impressive, where he does finish as the RB5 in total fantasy points. He sees a jump from 43% up to 63% of the snaps. He has 15 carries inside the 5-yard line, which is absolutely massive for a running back of his size. He has 87 targets. The dude had a 15.6% team target share. He looks like he is this generation's Alvin Kamara. But it's even better if you were looking at the games that he played with Tua. The games that he played with Tua, he averages 22.5 fantasy points per game. In comparison to the 6 games without Tua, he was only at 8.5. So I'm all in on Achane on a contender. Obviously, if Tua goes down again, he is going to fall dramatically down these ranks. I know if you actually look at the expert ranks on the site, most people have Amari and Hampton ahead of Achane. And again, with Hampton, the dude also absolutely crushes every box you could possibly imagine. Pull him up on the prospects page. You'll see that he is also right next to studs, just like Jeanty. Hampton checks the size box. He checks the receiving ability box. He gets the round 1 NFL draft capital. He has the athletic profile we look for. He goes to a team with a good offensive line, a team with a good quarterback, and a team with a good coaching staff. Hampton checks every single thing you could look for, which is why he's a top 5 running back for me immediately. If I was a rebuilder, I would definitely rather have him over Achane. Going over to Barkley, you for sure only want Barkley on a contending team. Right now, Barkley is getting drafted as the RB1 in redraft leagues. With Barkley, obviously, absolutely crushes last season. It's a running back that does go out there and he hits the 2,000 yards. And this isn't Jahmyr Gibbs type scenario in which he's hitting the 2,000 yards from a total perspective. No, he hit the 2,000 yards from just a rushing perspective. If you're looking at the snaps, 76%, but it's not super, super important in Philadelphia, of course, just a much better offense than what you had in New York. If you're looking at his age, that's going to be the main concern, of course. He's going to be 28 years old this next season. If we're looking at age 28 seasons that were similar to Saquon Barkley since the year 2000, you have Sean Alexander, Derrick Henry, Adrian Peterson, Larry Johnson, Tiki Barber, Edgar and James, Christian McCaffrey, Eddie George, Mike Anderson. Looking at the following season for these players, the median projections like 16, 17 points per game, which obviously would be a significant fall off in comparison to what he was at last season, but it wouldn't be that surprising if we did see some regression. Now, let's go over and let's look at Bucky Irving. Now, this is also something that I'm going to have different than most people on the site. If you're looking at most rankings on the site, the other guys have Henderson ahead of Bucky. And if you're a pure rebuilder, I'm fine with you going Henderson. I mean, Bucky's only 23 years old, right? At least he's going to be 23 years old this season. Finishes as the RB13. A juke rate of 30% is absolutely massive for Bucky Irving as a rookie. The receiving involvement, he does have 392 receiving yards, but only a 9% team target share. I think this is where he could really take a step forward this next season, especially if you remember the prospect that he was coming out of Oregon. This was a receiving running back. This is somebody that is a third down specialist. You look at the second half of the year, starting in week 10, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 top 10 finishes, including 2 more top 20 finishes, only 1 unusable week. The week that he gets injured against the Raiders, you can see that because the dude only played 15% of the snaps. So I'm completely fine putting Bucky 1 slot ahead of Henderson just because I think Bucky's going to hit the ground running, and I think that this is a running back you can comfortably build around on a contender. Trevion Henderson, right now in redraft leagues, he's more so getting drafted at like the 5-6 turn. What's actually really interesting is the schedule just dropped, and you can actually see that the Patriots have an absolute cakewalk. It's very, very surprising what their schedule looks like. But Henderson, the goal is he is the rookie season Alvin Kamara. He comes in, he sees a ridiculous amount of targets on a team that doesn't really have much when it comes to their passing weapons for Drake May. So good offense, great running back prospect profile. And yeah, I mean, that's why he's going to be the tier ahead of Judkins for me. Like Judkins, one, the receiving involvement's probably not going to be as high, right? Which obviously is going to make a massive difference. I'm assuming everybody watching this, or at least 90% of the people watching this, are playing in PPR leagues or playing in half PPR formats. If you're playing in a non-PPR format, then sure, bump Judkins up. But I don't think he's going to have the same level of receiving involvement as what you're going to get with Henderson. Now, don't get me wrong. He's still a capable receiver. You go back to his true freshman season, which the true freshman year is obviously the season that's insane for Judkins, where the man had 15 receptions, 132 receiving yards as a true freshman, which doesn't sound nuts. But if you go back and if you've looked at 1,000 running back prospect profiles, you'll notice typically the model for these running backs coming out of school is their freshman year, no receiving involvement. Their sophomore year, no receiving involvement. And then you get that box checked in their junior season. But Judkins was able to do it immediately. He did as a second-year player as well. He did it at Ohio State, not to the same extent, obviously, because he had to deal with Henderson. The issue is he's not going to catch the ball as much as Henderson will. And at the same time, he's in a bad offense. Like, if you were a contending roster, I'd be fine if you took Breece Hall instead. If we look at Breece Hall, significant fall off from 2023 to 2024. Falls from the RB2 down to the RB16. Now, what's very interesting with Breece is over the past 2 years, the man has not managed to actually be able to score touchdowns. 5 rushing touchdowns in 2023, 5 rushing touchdowns in 2024. What's really interesting is the receiving involvement. Well, it looks like on paper, maybe they used Breece as a receiver less this past season. In reality, he was used a lot more. He ran 423 routes as opposed to 340 the year prior. Now, the targets went down, the receptions went down, the target share fell from 17% down to 13.8%. But you have no Davante Adams. Similar to Henderson, I think they're going to have to use Breece as a receiver, even if they have a quarterback that's going to run the ball a ton. So obviously the check down rate for a quarterback like Justin Fields is naturally going to be a little bit lower. If you look at the snap rate, it has risen every year of his NFL career, going from 49% to 61% up to 72%. So Breece is on the field more. He's still running as many routes, if not more routes than he ever has. The issue is we just had the efficiency fall off for Breece Hall this past season. Rodgers was very different in the areas of the field that he was targeting. I'm going to stand by the talent, even if you're a little bit concerned with Fields having a lower checkdown rate. Now, if you're looking at the game logs on the site, the funny thing when you're looking at Chase Brown is it is a tale of two cities, tale of two stories, whatever the hell it's called. You're looking at the first half of the season when he had to play alongside Zach Moss before he ever sees a 60% snap share, where he's unreliable. Maybe if you're playing in best ball, you got a couple usable weeks in weeks 4 and week 5, but you're not actually putting this dude in your starting lineup. The second Zach Moss goes down, the second they give the reins over to Chase Brown, he is one of the best running backs in fantasy football. Week 9 onwards, the RB4, the RB3, the RB8, the RB9, the RB5, the RB4, the RB22, and the RB13. Now, my hesitation with Chase Brown is, from a dynasty perspective, this is a running back that does have very little invested into him. We go back this offseason to look at the fact that Cincinnati tried out a bunch of different running backs. They were bringing in a bunch of guys. If y'all remember, myself and pretty much everybody that talks about this, we were all concerned about the Cincinnati Bengals taking a running back. So there's still a possibility if Chase Brown doesn't come through and absolutely crush and cement himself as one of the best running backs in the league this season, you're going to be playing the dance again next offseason with Chase Brown, that maybe the Bengals take someone. He's a little bit of an older player in comparison to what you would expect as well. We're like, Chase Brown's going to be 25 years old this season, and Breece Hall is going to be 24, which is a little bit funny to compare. I'm going over and looking at Jonathan Taylor. Taylor's actually getting drafted at the end of round 2 in redraft leagues at the moment. Like, what's funny is, obviously I'm doing the underdog streams every single night at this point on the redraft channel. And Jonathan Taylor there is going like the end of round 2 in comparison to like Chase Brown in the middle of round 3. I think I'd rather have Chase Brown in redraft. Also, Chase Brown is a year younger, so obviously I'm going to prefer Chase Brown in Dynasty. We look at Taylor, everything came at the very end of the season. This is why I think the people on Underdog are overdrafting him, and to be honest. 40 points against the Tennessee Titans in week 16. 27 points against the New York Giants in week 17. He was the running back 1 in the semis and the running back 1 in the fantasy football championship last year. He finishes as an RB1 on the season. Obviously, myself, and I think a lot of people look back on the 2021 year as something we were very excited about with Taylor. But I don't know. We just haven't particularly seen the level of involvement as a receiver, which makes me think he's an extremely safe option. You're looking at a player that had an 8% team target share this past season, 7.6% the year before that. So if the Colts are going to be a bad offense and Taylor's not going to have a massive receiving role, I'm maybe a little bit concerned about the floor that we're looking at. Now, clearly we know the ceiling. The ceiling's insane based off the talent, but also you look at the contract situation and the fact that Taylor's about to be 26 years old this season. He's only a running back you want a contending team. And we can say that pretty much about all these running backs for the rest of this video, outside of obviously the guys that are rookies. But like going over to our next tier with Kyren Williams, same boat that we had with Chase Brown, right? Where we are concerned about the Rams taking a running back in the NFL draft, a running back of significance. Obviously, they take Hunter, but we're not too concerned there. Kyren Williams, last year of his rookie deal, running back that doesn't have a bunch invested into him. So there is a realistic shot that Kyron's either not a Ram long-term, and he goes to a different offense that doesn't utilize him the same way because the Rams use him as a workhorse. Kyren Williams back-to-back seasons, 84% and 88% of the snaps. Juke rate's been good. His average about 20% through his NFL career. The receiving involvement's not great, but it's not horrible over the past 2 seasons, an 11.5 and an 8% team target share, which is actually funny because you go back to his time at college, he's supposed to be a great receiving back, and Stafford's a pocket passing quarterback, so you'd assume that the targets would be a lot higher than they actually are. But I don't know, true 3-down workhorse, I just don't necessarily know how much you can pencil this in for the long term. Going over looking at James Cook, kind of the same thing, right? We're looking at a low-end RB1 in redraft, high-end RB2 in redraft, that like you could very easily see being a fantasy relevant running back for the next 3 to 4 seasons. He's going to be 26 years old this year, but he wasn't the elite level player ever that like a Derrick Henry was, where you can see Henry getting to 30, that like a McCaffrey was. Like, he's just kind of one of these guys. It wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world. He gets off his rookie contract, and again, 2-3 years from now, James Cook isn't much. The big thing that we want to be looking at here with James Cook is the change in how they utilized him from the first 2 years of his career to 2024. Now, obviously, on flockfantasy.com, there are different numbers that we have when you're looking at these player pages and these statistics that you're not going to find elsewhere. One thing that we decided to add for running backs and quarterbacks is carries inside the 5-yard line. And this is what I want you to look at for James Cook here. As a rookie, 0 carries inside the 5-yard line. And it's not like he didn't touch the ball. He had 91 carries. 0 of them came at the goal line. As a second-year player, volume jumped up dramatically. The man had 237 carries. 5 of those came at the goal line. Nothing. This past season, he only has 207 carries, but 15 of them are at the goal line. So he jumps up from 4 total rushing touchdowns to the first 2 years of his NFL career, up to 16 rushing touchdowns in year 3. Obviously, massive breakout. Realistically, there is a shot that we do see some regression here. And again, at the same time, it's not like we can view him or Kyren Williams as like the McCaffrey, the Derrick Henry level players where we'll know that they're playing till 30. You are really year to year with all these running backs. You're year to year with Josh Jacobs at this point as well. Now, Jacobs obviously absolutely crushes this past season, finishes as the RB6, has 300 carries. You're looking at a massive workload so far through this dude's career. 242, 273, 217, 340, 233, and 301 carries by season. But Jacobs typically stays healthy. Typically, you see a ton of volume. The efficiency looked really good this past year, 26% in juke rate. Jacobs typically at the very top of the NFL with his juke rate. Looking at the receiving involvement, it wasn't great. I know you could say, well, maybe the Packers didn't throw the ball a ton, and that's why Jacobs wasn't involved. No, you only had a 9.3% team target share, which isn't incredible, of course, but should project out as an RB1. Currently, he's getting drafted at the 2-3 turn of redraft leagues. Going to be 27 years old this season, and obviously, there is a lot of volume under his belt. Going over and looking at CMC. CMC is going to be 29 years old this season. Getting drafted at the 1-2 turn of redraft leagues, which again is very much relevant because you're only ever taking CMC on a contending build. If you're a rebuilder, for the love of God, sell this dude for RJ Harvey, sell this dude for Caleb Johnson immediately. We've talked about this a lot, but what's really funny with McCaffrey is it's a binary range of outcomes on what you're going to get. He is either a league winner or he is injured. RB2, RB1, RB33, RB28, RB2, RB1, RB67. If McCaffrey is healthy this season, history says he will be a top 3 running back. Niners have a great schedule as well. But again, you are looking at a running back that's going to be 29 years old. So that is going to be a concern. The saving grace is historically, he's at an 18, 19, 20% team target share. So historically, we are going to expect that that receiving skill set actually lasts a little bit longer. I'm going over and looking at RJ Harvey. He's getting drafted right now in round 5 of underdog drafts in terms of expectations for this season. Obviously, you have a brand new slate for his rookie deal. Now, he's a much, much, much older rookie, which is something to note. And I know people are going to say, well, I don't care. I'm going to draft him and I'm going to get 4 years out of him. but you at least have to say it out loud, and you at least have to acknowledge that he's an older running back, because it will impact his dynasty value. Like, he comes through and he's the RB 20 this season. The dynasty community, not myself included, everybody watching this video, if he's the RB 20 this year, you would rank him differently if he did that at 20 years old. However, he's older than Kyle Pitts. So again, I'm not necessarily saying that you need to go through and you need to avoid him by any stretch of the imagination, but I think you need to be realistic with how his age is going to impact how the dynasty community values him next offseason and how they judge specifically his rookie year. Now, going over to Caleb Johnson, at the time of this recording, the Pittsburgh Steelers do not have a quarterback. They traded away George Pickens. So I know some people are saying that, oh, this is going to be an offense that wants to run the ball over and over and over again, which is probably true, but also it's probably going to be an offense that's very bad. For the time being, Jaylen Warren is still there. Not only is Jaylen Warren still there, but if it's a bad offense, Warren has the receiving role, you're banking on Caleb Johnson rushing touchdowns in terms of the high value opportunities, which we can't guarantee that they are going to be there unless maybe you don't have Mason Rudolph, you don't have Will Howard actually at quarterback. In terms of the prospect we're looking at, super exciting player. This is more like the traditional running back that we're looking at in college in terms of the receiving involvement, right? Where 4 receptions, 3 receptions, then you get the jump to 22 his true junior season. But the man had 23 total touchdowns in this Iowa offense this past year. The next highest player was Brendan Sullivan with 4 rushing touchdowns himself. So he was the entire Iowa offense. And if you're a rebuilder, if you're a contender, you can hold on to these rookie running backs, which is kind of the exciting thing and why typically I'm going to be higher on the rookie RBs in our overall dynasty ranks than most people. Now, moving over and looking at tier 5, Kenneth Walker is a running back that I know we've had some people saying they're concerned about the Zach Charbonnet role expanding this year, but Kenneth Walker actually played a career high 64% of the snaps this past season and games that he played. Of course, if you're looking at the snap percentage, if you're looking at the target share in offenses on the site, those are going to be adjusted to the games that they actually played in. So Walker's getting used more than ever. This is a running back that did get the draft capital coming out. He does have the team investment, and he's going to be not super old. He's going to be 25 years old this season. So even if Walker were to be out of Seattle, I maybe have a little bit more confidence with him in comparison to some of these other names like Chuba Hubbard. Now, I absolutely hate to say this, right? And it's going to put me out on a ledge here because Chuba Hubbard was one of the league-winning players this past year. Chuba Hubbard finishes as the RB15 despite being on nobody's radar to be the bell cow in this offense the entire season. He handles 75% of the carries in the games that he plays. He has a target share close to 12%. So he is a true 3-down workhorse this past year. If you look at age 25 seasons, similar to Chuba Hubbard from this past year, you have Ronnie Brown, Joe Mixon, Marshawn Lynch, Mark Ingram, Brandon Jacobs, Chris Carson, Saquon Barkley, Lamar Miller. And the median projection the following year is like 17 points per game. That's great for Hubbard. He gets the contract extension. My hesitation is if we do take a step backwards and look at him through his entire NFL career, it's never been super inspiring. He's never had a juke rate ahead of 20%. He's never had a top 24 RB finish before this season. I know he had a lot of pedigree like back in college, but he didn't get the draft capital. So I'm just looking at a running back that kind of breaks out in year 4. The team this year signs Rico Dowdle in free agency. They draft Trevor Etienne as well. Not that I think Dowdle or Etienne are better than Hubbard. They're definitely not. But it does show me that this team is thinking that they need to address the running back position, even if it is the depth. So I'm a little bit concerned. I definitely only want Chuba Hubbard on a contender, but that's the same thing with Walker. It's the same thing with Mixon, same thing with Henry, same thing with all these guys in this range. Mixon is going to be 29 years old this next season. In 2024, you do see the drop-off in total fantasy points, but it's just because he plays 3 less games. The points per game are actually identical. The target share is 12.1%. He handles 68% of the carries in this offense. So Mixon looks identical to his volume numbers in Cincinnati. Looking at the depth, yeah, they take a rookie on day 3. Not really going to push Mixon for anything, maybe other than some receiving work that he wasn't getting on third downs anyway. The main concern that you have to have is just, does he fall off at 29? And I know people are going to look at like Derrick Henry and say, oh, age doesn't matter anymore at the running back position. And they're going to ignore the fact that Ezekiel Elliott in that same draft class has already fallen off. They're going to ignore the fact that in the 2017 class that Joe Mixon was in, Leonard Fournette's already done and dusted. Dalvin Cook's already done and dusted. Austin Eckler's already done and dusted in that same class. And you do see these guys just start to drop like flies. And also you have the offensive line concerns with Mixon. And going over and looking at Derrick Henry, again, this just goes right back to talking about running back age. The old running backs were the guys that won leagues last year. Derrick Henry won leagues. Derrick Henry was the RB4. Of course, the receiving involvement was not there. It never is. 5% target share. But the man had 16 rushing touchdowns and he had 20 carries inside the 5-yard line. So he's a first and second down running back in one of the league's top offenses that is going to have a ridiculous number of touchdowns. He's also 31, turning 32 in January. And again, he has held on and he has been incredible so far. Now, if we look at the best age 31 seasons that we have had since the year 2000, there's been one running back to average 20 points per game. And that was Curtis Martin at exactly 20 points per game. So Derrick Henry will either one of two things: regress at 31 years old, or be essentially the best 31-year-old running back we've ever seen. Again, I would say that 9 times out of 10, the historical data says even with these guys like LaDainian Tomlinson, even with these guys like Adrian Peterson that are Hall of Fame, the best to ever do it, they get into their 30s and their efficiency drops off. Which I think the Henry efficiency probably does drop off, but the thing is, he may score enough touchdowns where it doesn't matter. Going over David Montgomery, another older running back. David Montgomery going to be 28. Obviously, only want him on a contending team. If you look at his snap rate, it's fallen for 4 years straight. Starting at 75%, down to 65%, down to 48%, down to 42%. What's very interesting with Montgomery, and this is what actually saved Montgomery's fantasy value from last season to this season, is the receiving involvement. Montgomery in Gibbs' rookie season was not used on third down at all. It was all Jahmyr Gibbs. Montgomery had a 5.3% team target share. That almost doubled this past year, up to 9%. He tripled his receiving yards from 117 up to 341. So all of a sudden, Montgomery got a lot more involvement as a receiver. But again, I'm going to expect that Gibbs is the player to continue to expand his role over time. Going over looking at Kamara, it's going to be 30. Now, every single year of his NFL career, he's finished at least as a top 14 running back, at least in a full PPR format. He had a 21% team target share this past season. That's higher than any year that we've had since 2020. He played 73% of the snaps. His juke rate has fallen off over the past 3 seasons. If we're looking at running backs that had similar age 29 years to Kamara and what they did the following year at 30, we had Marshall Faulk. Don't know if you know him. Back in the day, pretty damn good. Matt Forte. Don't know if you know him. Back in the day, pretty damn good. LT. Don't know if you know him. Back in the day, pretty damn good. Amon Green, Brian Westbrook, LaShawn McCoy, Michael Pittman, Alvin Kamara, James Conner. Great running backs. And what happened with all of these players? Every single one of them, their points per game got worse from 29 to age 30. Tyler Shuck is this dude's starting quarterback at the moment. So that is going to be concerning for me. Going over and looking at Pacheco, Pacheco's only going to be 26 this season. But again, when we're valuing these guys, even in Dynasty, the Pacheco age is almost irrelevant because you're taking it year by year anyway. Pacheco could be completely off the map 12 months from now, where I do an updated Dynasty rankings video. I have to update my rankings on the site. Realistically, by week 5, week 6, Pacheco could be outside my top 50 Dynasty running back rankings. That is in the range of outcomes. And for that reason, as I say this, Pacheco probably needs to fall. I need to move Pacheco behind Connor. I need to move him behind Tootin. I need to move him behind Scadaboo. I need to move him behind DeAndre Swift. Hell, I'd rather have Swift and redraft at this point. That's really the only thing that's going to matter when we're evaluating these guys like Pacheco versus Connor, because they are both one-year rentals pretty much anyway. Now, maybe you have the upside that if like these Pacheco Swift options actually turn out to be good, then maybe you get an extra year or two. But we are taking it year by year. Like looking at James Conner, you're not getting anything beyond 2025. James Conner, RB11 this past season, finally plays all 16 games. He saves my team in the Flock League. Thank you, buddy. I really do appreciate it. But realistically, 30-year-old running back that's never been able to stay healthy. We look at all the running backs that had similar age 29 seasons, and every single one of them got worse at 30. Going over and looking at Tootin, looking at Scadaboo. Scadaboo has higher expectations from a redraft perspective, but if I'm looking at Tootin long-term, there's no way Travis Etienne's with this team in 2026. 2026 and beyond, Tootin very easily could be the starting running back. Or if you're looking at Scadaboo, Tyron Tracy is going to be there in 2026. Now, do I expect Tracy to be the starting running back? Probably not. You can look at these rankings. You can see that Tracy's not in this tier, but Tracy could be a thorn on the side of Scadaboo. Going over and looking at DeAndre Swift, Brian Robinson, Charbonnet, Pollard, Aaron Jones, they're all one-year rentals. Swift, what's actually really funny is he has never finished outside the top 20 running backs in total fantasy points, which is hilarious because it seems like this dude's a bum year in and year out. I mean, we had a little nice stretch of games, weeks 4 through 8 this past season, where he was the RB3, the RB2, the RB6, and the RB11. Outside of that, did not get much. But Swift has had significant improvements to the offensive line, the coaching staff, the quarterback play, and no added in competition, really. So Swift is set up to crush. Brian Robinson, another one of these guys that we thought was going to get replaced in the NFL draft, just like Swift. Brian Robinson looks to be the starter. Good offense, good quarterback. Again, one-year rental coming to the year end of his rookie contract. Maybe he finds himself in a committee somewhere else, or maybe he re-signs with Washington. You do see a positive in that he is trending in the right direction with his involvement. He does play a career high 55% of the snaps this past year for the Commanders, but his juke rate has fallen for 3 straight seasons, from 28% down to 21%, down to 18%, indicating that maybe he's losing a little bit of juice. Going over to Charbonnet, I love Charbonnet, right? We can go through and you can look at individual weeks and you can say, okay, this is a running back that, yes, if Walker's out, you can pencil him in as a top 12 RB. Maybe in 2026, Charbonnet gets the job by himself. And if he were to be the starting running back going into the season, I rank him much higher than where I rank DeAndre Swift and Brian Robinson this year. But I think you have to put a discount on Charbonnet just because we don't know if he is going to get that 2026 opportunity. You don't know if Walker's going to re-sign. Pollard, Aaron Jones, both very clearly just assets that you're going to contend with. Pollard, you have to go up against Spears, and Pollard absolutely dominated Spears back-to-back seasons now. 71% of the snaps 2 years ago, 69% of the snaps this past season. So I don't necessarily think you can say Spears is the favorite to lead this backfield. And then going over and looking at Aaron Jones, yeah, great year. This past year, 63% of the snaps was actually the highest mark that we've seen in a long time, like much better in Minnesota here. Looking at the receiving involvement, he has a 12% team target share, which is incredible. He runs 257 routes. Difficulty is, you look at the fact that he's going to be 31 years old this next season. We look at the historical comps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the 7 closest comparable seasons at 30 years old got worse at 31. Now, I know you're going to say, well, Mason, Aaron Jones is pretty damn good. And what I would say with that is Adrian Peterson was also pretty damn good, who had 16.7 points per game at 30 and followed that up with 3.7 the following year at 31. I think Jordan Mason actually can take some work here. Now, going over and looking at our next guy, Jaden Blue, I don't think he's a special player by any stretch of the imagination, but he reasonably could have a shot at a starting job as a rookie running back, one of the better offenses in the league. Tyrone Tracy's going to have a role in New York, even if we like Scattaboo. Trey Benson, I think you could juice him up a little bit higher than this, to be honest. I think you could put Trey Benson in the tier above. My difficulty with that is just going to be, we didn't see anything at all last season. He played 17% of the snaps. The juke rate was high at 26%, but he had a 1.6% team target share. He had 6 targets. Now, he only ran 20 routes, but I don't know. It was a weak running back class last year, and I'm afraid that Benson just got juiced up because of it. Going over and looking at Jalen Warren, pretty talented running back, but he's probably not startable this year. And again, you can't bank on these running backs at this range in Dynasty ever being anything in the future. Like a 2026 RB could come in and take the job of Warren. Javonte has the crack at a starting job here in Dallas. The difficult part with that is Javante's just look like absolute buns. Back-to-back seasons now where it looks like the injury in 2022 just wiped away everything he had. He had a 33% juke rate as a rookie. Finishes as the RB15 with only 50% of the snaps played. So you're thinking, oh, okay, this is a running back that's on a great trajectory. Devastating injury in 2022 where he flashed 2022. He was sitting there with a 30% juke rate as well. And then since then, 16% and 14% juke rate. Now, the receiving involvement was great at a 13% target share this past season. And he should be the favorite to have a starting job in Dallas this next year. Looking at Ramondre Stevenson, Stevenson's probably just a handcuff at this point. Jordan Mason, probably just a handcuff at this point. But you can almost say the same thing about every one of the running backs in this tier. Like, again, I do want to reiterate, if you're like a rebuilding team, obviously the rookie running backs you can hold on to, hoping that we get a pop in value. But even like these younger running backs that are like 23, like Trey Benson, if you're a rebuilding roster and you can cash out and get a decent penny for them, no worries. Cash out, get the 2026 picks, and just get assets you know are going to increase in value over time. But I think that's all I got for you. Again, if y'all wanted to go check out any of like the stats or any of the rankings on the site, I know there's been some confusion. If you wanted to look at the tiers on the site, what you got to do is, one, you have to be a site member to look at the tiers specifically, but hit add creator and then select whatever creator you want to see. And then at that point, it will show you all the tiers with them as well. But if you wanted to look at any of the stats that we are referencing, just click on the player on the rankings page. It will show you a drop down and you can look at anything you want to see there. But thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate you. And I'll see you later with our wide receiver rankings.